It's December 3rd,
Yes.
2010.
Yes.
We're in a festive mood
Yes, we are.
at the newly reopened Comfort Inn. I got to thank Terry Maron and Jimmy Murray for allowing us a space again. We've taken advantage of their good wishes and goodwill several times to do TV shows here. They're both good friends. We're thrilled that, like the phoenix, they've risen from the ashes
That's true.
of this tremendous fire 2 years ago, and now they're open again, and their restaurant, Perkins, up in the corner, is open and going strong.
Wonderful.
I don't know where our viewers might have been on October 17th. As I was driving here this morning, I was trying to remember where I was on October 17th. And I was bouncing around, I'm sure, doing something. But we have a lady here who was really bouncing around.
That is true.
And she was in Rome, Italy.
Yes.
Ursula Akey, how are you?
I'm very well, sir. Thank you.
I'm so pleased.
you.
Never mind the sir stuff right off the bat here. You know it's Gordy.
Okay, Gordy.
When Calvin told me we were going to discuss Brother Andre, Saint Andre Bessette today, I was thrilled beyond words.
Yes.
Because we have followed that story. You probably did since childhood.
Well, since I was young, that's very true. Yes, it's always been a part of the heritage of as I grew up knowing about Brother Andre, and then I married into a family who had very strong connections to Brother Andre. Many people in the North Country also do. Some of you also know that it was my husband's grandfather who was healed by Brother Andre back in the early 1900s. He was healed after a very serious mill accident in Sable Forks, where he was basically crippled beyond repair. They took him to Montreal and tried to, in the hospital there, tried to help him, but were unable to do anything to really fix the injuries that had happened. And so, in the process of being in Montreal, he was introduced to Brother Andre. And Brother Andre at the time was making his rounds in the hospital and came to be in touch with my husband's grandfather, whose name was Fred Akey. And it was that he had the opportunity to be prayed with by Brother Andre. And these injuries that were beyond repair by medical science were healed through the power of God. And Brother Andre, using his devotion to Saint Joseph, who he attributed to his intercessory powers for prayer and healing. So, yes.
Isn't that a wonderful story? Do you have any idea what year that was?
Well, the healing took place in 1917. So it was back in the day.
It was back in the day. We should point out, and we'll tell the whole Brother Andre, Saint Andre Bessette story before we finish here today. But there are some viewers, I'm sure, who don't know the story.
Oh.
And it's too bad because it's a part of the fabric of this entire region.
Of this North Country,
Of
yes.
this North Country, Canada, and New England.
Absolutely.
But he was born in 1845. And he actually died 6 months before I was born.
Oh my goodness.
In January of 1937.
Wow.
And it's amazing for me to believe that he lived to be almost 92 years old, in spite of the fact that they didn't think he was going to live 5 minutes when he was
That's right.
born.
They baptized him as soon as he was born based on the fact that he didn't appear as if he was going to live. So, and always as a young child was very slight and very, had many maladies in his life that his health was not good, and he did not really thrive and grow to be as large and as healthy as most people for many reasons based on his upbringing and so forth. So
He certainly never ate much.
no.
From the time he was born to the moment he died. Maybe that's a lesson for the rest of us, like me over
we
here.
could take a little
But in
instruction.
reading his life story so many times, you realize that he sometimes could not eat much at all besides flour and water?
Right, right.
Isn't that amazing?
It is.
And hardly ever got any sleep?
He was always praying or always praying with people and always there to help others. Yes.
You know, again, we'll tell many parts of the story, but humility is an important word.
Very
And it's kind of a rare commodity in this age of cynicism.
It's so true, so true.
And ego is so important in politics and everywhere else. But
true.
this man that we're talking about here today had none.
No.
As a matter of fact, he was very unhappy with people when people told him he was responsible for these cures.
Right. He wanted to not have any of the glory for himself. He wanted to give it all to God and to his intercessor, Saint Joseph. So he was always not about himself, but always giving God the glory.
Were you born and brought up in Au Sable Forks?
I actually was not, no. It was my husband's family who had the main connection with Brother Andre, and they are from the area of Keysville, Au Sable area. And I come from downstate a bit, but I've been here so long, I certainly feel like I am a North Country.
You know, I feel exactly the same way. When you say downstate a bit, where is that?
Binghamton, New York,
Binghamton!
mostly. Yeah.
I think the snow swept across Binghamton over
Yeah.
the last few days. As
Yes, it
we're
has.
recording this in early December, and I saw those people on the thruway. How can you not say a prayer for those people who were trapped in their
Awful.
cars for 18 hours?
That's just
Oh
awful.
my goodness.
And I just came from there on Thanksgiving weekend.
Did you really?
So,
You
yeah,
made
but
it?
I made it before.
Oh.
Thank goodness. Yes.
So you married a guy from the Au Sable Keysville area.
That's right, that's
and that's
right.
how you've made the connection.
That's right. And so Brother Andre and the place of St. Joseph's Oratory in Montreal have remained very close to us throughout the years. I've been here in the North Country. Whenever we would have an opportunity, we would make a pilgrimage to the shrine and pray and just share the moments of being close to Brother Andre, where he is interned, buried in a tomb there. And just feeling very much like he was a part of our family, and that we might not even have our family if it wasn't for Brother Andre, because his grandfather's healing, my husband's grandfather's healing that took place, really enabled him to go on and marry and have a family and work. And of course, one of those children of his, 11 children, was my husband's father. So it was very
No
special.
kidding,
Yes,
11
so-
children?
yes.
That sounds familiar. In my family, isn't that amazing?
Isn't that beautiful?
And Brother Andre himself
Yes,
was one of 12 children. 2 died in, I guess, childbirth. But
right.
his
right.
poor mother, after his father died in a lumber accident with a tree falling on him, tried to raise her 10 kids that remained, and herself died of TB just a
Tuberculosis, that's
few
right.
years
I
later.
know. And so he was very young when he had no parents at all, and turned in, of course, to those who could help him around him, his older siblings, but also just grew closer to God through the experience. As it was in my life, I've lost both of my parents at a very young age, and I really truly believe that that was what brought me into a closer relationship with, God and the church and Mary as my mother. So I think it also was for Brother Andre and St. Joseph as his spiritual father, and he continued to feel that way through the rest of his life. Yes.
We're going to talk so much about this topic. I'm just so excited. I'm thrilled to be here.
Me too.
But in the process, I'm sure you would agree with me that we should urge people to take a trip. Make that
Absolutely.
pilgrimage, not necessarily to Rome as you did, but to Montreal and Mount Royal.
Oh, what a beautiful, beautiful
And
place.
to just
spiritually.
feel what you feel
Yes.
when you're up there. And whether or
Absolutely.
not you're directly related to Brother Andre, you have to feel something unless
Absolutely.
you have a very hard heart
Right,
when you
right.
go up there.
Right.
And I'm embarrassed to say I haven't been up there in a while, but
Uh-huh.
it's time for another trip.
Time for a trip.
now.
Yeah.
How many times have you been there?
Oh, I don't know that I could count the number of times. Probably at least 20 times probably through the last, through the last 30 years. And every time I go, I sense a very special presence of both Brother Andre and our connection with him, and also, with, just truly the spirit of pilgrimage, of going to a place, a holy place where, God is calling me to be and grow closer to Him. So, and I always sense something special happens when I'm there. Always.
Talk to me just a little bit, or a lot if you prefer, because we've got a lot of time, about Brother Andre's early days up there and how he dreamed of having this chapel, and oh, if he had only lived to see what's up there at the oratory now.
It is so true. Well, I think it's really a wonderful story because Brother Andre, first of all, was simply a brother, and I say that in the terms of humility. He was not a priest. He was not able to be ordained a priest because they felt his health and maybe even his mentality was not up to what they figured a priest should be at that time. And so he lived very humbly as the doorman at the college, at the school that was there. And he became very clearly a holy person just by the way he greeted and meted and was able to comfort people as they came through the door. And then he began to be noted that his prayers brought healing to people, and then many people began to come. And as he would share with people his devotion and his intercession through the prayers of Saint Joseph, the great thing was that he knew that people would begin to also have the same kind of devotion to Saint Joseph. And so he wanted to bring that about more clearly by building a shrine, a church to honor Saint Joseph. So he began very humbly by building a tiny small chapel.
$200.
Yes, up on the top of a
Don't you love
mountain. And there is, I have to say, in this picture, you see this small little chapel. It's up on the hillside out back of the oratory, which is now there.
Okay.
And in this little chapel, which was devoted to Saint Joseph, many people came and were able to visit with Brother Andre and be prayed with, and many, many wonderful healings occurred. And as people came to know more and more about it and want to support the fact that this little man, this humble little brother, was doing this work, they began giving donations and began the process, as he had a vision of a very large, wonderful basilica. And it's wonderful. It was begun during his lifetime, but it was only just begun. The bottom portion of it, which is the foundation, was set both by Brother Andre and by this building, which is now very large and wonderful at the top of Montreal, on Mount Royal. And it's a wonderful, beautiful place that everyone should take the time to visit.
Every time I go up there, I look for the cross, and you can see it for miles
and miles.
This is a beautiful high spot, Mount
Right.
Royal. It was all meant to be, as you
Oh,
know.
true.
And it's like 385 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
Just a tremendous edifice.
Absolutely. I understand that on the very clearest of days you can see it from the top of Whiteface Mountain. So I've never been there on
These
that
eyes,
clear.
probably not. That would take a miracle.
Maybe with a telescope, right? A very good telescope. But
you
I
know,
understand.
As part of the process, Brother Andre was a humble soul, but he believed that there was so much power outside of that frail frame of his that he buried a medal, didn't he?
Absolutely.
On the spot.
Where that church would be built.
Ta-da!
And there it is today, standing strong and tall. It's so wonderful. When we were in Rome on pilgrimage for this canonization of his, there is a place within St. Peter's Basilica that marks all of the major churches around the world, all of the largest churches, and this church, St. Joseph's Oratory in Montreal is marked on that floor because that's how large it is. It's the largest church dedicated to St. Joseph in the whole world. So I think it's a wonderful place that everybody should have the opportunity to make it to and visit and come away.
And to think, as a young man, he was denied the community of the Holy Cross at first because of his health.
Right.
And
So true.
was so humble along the way. And
So
we have to point out, like many other great people, he wasn't universally appreciated in his own time.
Right.
There were lots of naysayers. There are newspaper articles where people say, "Where does this guy get off?
I know. Well, who does he think he
Who
is?
does
The
he
little brother.
think he is, the little brother?" And now that we look back on it, we say,
Look at this. Yeah, it's true. And in so many saints' lives, that's true. They weren't appreciated in their day until people began to examine and really appreciate where they were and what they did and what their real lives were about. So I think that's beautiful.
there are so many people in our general area, between here and Keysville, all over this part of northern New York and in
Right.
Canada, who have a personal story to tell
and
about
I
Brother
heard-
Andre.
I heard hundreds as I was putting together this pilgrimage, because if I can just share with you how that happened.
Of course you can.
Knowing a little bit of the background of my connection with Brother Andre, I always knew, now he's Saint Brother Andre, and I just want to kind of make that clear that they've kept it that when he was beatified, he was known as Blessed Brother Andre.
Absolutely.
And now they're going to keep the brother in his
Don't you
title.
love it?
So it's going to
As
be
well it should
Saint
be.
Brother Andre,
I love
because
it.
the humility is contained within that. So when the time was that I knew that he would be canonized one day, I said, I will be in Rome for that. Yes, because I felt
I
so
love it.
connected to him.
I love it.
And so when it was announced in March that he would be canonized, I was thrilled because I so was looking forward on October 17th to being there. And the very first week after that announcement was made, I happened to be at Mass, and I was thinking about how wonderful that I would be in Rome for this occasion. And it came clearly to me from, I believe, from God, that I should be taking with me others in the area that felt a very special bond to him also. And so I thought, oh, you're not serious, Lord. But he was. And so I said, okay, here I am, Lord. And so I began doing a little bit of research and found out there was a larger group going from the oratory that were being taken there. And I was in touch with them and was able to connect and say, I want to bring a group from northern New York who these people feel very close to Brother Andre, and I really want to bring them as a part of your larger group. And they said, sure, come along. So we were able to advertise, and I got many hundreds of calls from people inquiring about the possibility of going and sharing their stories of how they were connected and how close they were to Brother Andre in their lives, in the lives of their family, in the healings that had occurred at his, at his hands. And so it was a wonderful thing. I also, I'm a nurse. I work at Uline Mercy in Lake Placid. And
Bless you for that, too.
As you can, it is a blessing to me. It truly is. As you can imagine, I take care of a lot of elderly people, many who have a lot of devotion, and many who know about Brother Andre. Of course, their generation was the generation that truly had connections, that knew family members who had been touched by him, who had themselves met him and prayed with him. And so it's been a very wonderful experience for me, not only for my own personal connection, but to hear all the other stories. So it's wonderful.
There are so many stories. I mean, if somebody watching this program has lived under a rock for a while and had never heard of Brother Andre, I imagine they'll be scrounging to learn more.
Oh, yes.
We hope you will watch this program
Yes.
with Ursula Akey and learn a great deal more about it. I just want to show a picture before we take a little break so that people know exactly who we're talking about. We refer to him as the little brother. We talk about his weak body, but his strong devotion made him as big as anything we could ever imagine.
Absolutely, and isn't that an inspiration to all of us?
I hope it is. It is for us,
It
the
is
three of
too.
us in this room, that's for
Absolutely.
sure. Let's pause for a moment.
Okay, very good. We'll be ready.
We continue our interview with Ursula Akey, who formed a wonderful pilgrimage to Rome on October 17th, 2010 for the canonization of Saint Brother Andre Bessette.
Wonderful.
I think it's important for those people who may not quite understand why we care so much about this topic, what sainthood involves. Actually, the canonization involved 5 other people who were canonized that day,
And that
didn't
is
it?
correct. Yes, I will just give you a little poster that kind of shows you that besides our dear brother Andre, there were 5 others that were canonized on that day by our Holy Father, Pope Benedict XVI. Yes, it was wonderful.
So let's talk about how one becomes a saint and how the Roman Catholic Church feels about sainthood.
Okay. Well, a person like Brother Andre, Saint Brother Andre, who lived a life that definitely was one of extraordinary kind of holiness. You could sense that in this person. People knew it. When he died, millions of people came to Montreal to pay him homage. He was definitely known by many as a very saintly man. But the church has a process that it takes us through to get from that point to the point of actually being canonized a saint. And Brother Andre's cause for canonization was put before the church's hierarchy, which has the authority and ability to discern whether or not a person is actually to be canonized. And before the canonization takes place, they're beatified, which means that they are considered blessed. And in the process of being canonized, if their cause for canonization is completed to the church's satisfaction. And that includes a lot of work and documentation of the person's life to make sure that everything is in complete line with what people's impressions of the person are. Many logs and books of this person's writings and or their workings are presented to a large committee, and they continue to work through the process. Also, there must be 2 documented miracles that are attributed to the prayers of a person who is in the process of being canonized. And there were these 2 miracles which happened for Brother Andre within the recent time. We're not talking back when he was healing the many people he prayed with. But in recent days, and the last miracle happened approximately a year ago, and at that time they pushed through, and the actual declaration that was signed and said this man will be canonized happened in March of last year. And so it was at that time that we knew he had completed what it took to be considered a saint with a capital S, meaning that he, in our eyes in the church, is definitely a man of God who we can look up to as saints with small s's trying to get there. One who is in heaven, one who we trust we can ask to help us on our journey here, that accompanies us on our journey, that we don't walk alone, that they are all present with us, and that we can trust that we can count on their prayers for us, and that we can also pray for their intercession. And just to make sure everyone's clear about that, when we pray to ask them for their intercession. We're not praying to them as if they are the ones, but what we're doing is we're asking for them to pray for us to God, who they're in heaven already, and also close and experiencing the power that's there, can send back to us the answers to our prayers. And so it's a wonderful thing to have these older brothers and sisters in heaven that we can trust are truly with us on our journey and will pray for us in heaven. Like when I ask you to pray for me, I know you will, they will pray also for us in heaven, close to God the Father.
And as we said, you and I said, the moment we met before the cameras ever began, we believe, if we didn't believe these prayers worked,
Right.
Life would be awfully tough for me.
Yes.
And I know for the three of us in this room.
Right.
And another thing I think it's important to point out that this man, many people when he was a child did not know that his destiny was written this way.
Right. Right.
He was almost 100% illiterate until he was way up into his 20s.
Exactly.
Couldn't read or write
Right.
until they got a hold of him in Montreal and said, I hope you're a quick study.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, when he was sent there to Montreal with a recommendation, the recommendation said, I'm sending you a saint.
Yes. Isn't that
Ta-da! So now that we've established that part of it, it's important to talk a little bit more. I have to get one story out of the way because I talked
Okay.
with my brother-in-law, is Dr. Deacon Donald Dashnaw, who now lives in South Carolina, but his wife is my wife's sister, and they lived across the street from us in Morrisonville for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I called Donald last night, said, guess who I'm going to talk to tomorrow? And of course, they're so excited to watch this program
That's
when it's
great.
completed because they were a direct part of it. It was customary in Donald's family to name a lot of the men Joseph.
Oh, yes.
And so his grandfather was Joseph, and his grandfather's father was Joseph. But his grandfather became friends with Brother Andre.
Wow.
When Brother Andre made fairly frequent trips to St. Alexander's Church in Morrisonville because he himself was a close personal friend of Father Gobet in Morrisonville, who was an icon in the church for a long, long time. And it's kind of humorous because this Joseph Rabideau, Donald's grandfather, came to the brother one time, and either he said or his wife said, you know, Joseph has this terrible respiratory problem and asthma, and maybe you could somehow intercede and get a cure for him. Brother Andre looked Joseph right in the eye and said, sometimes it's good to suffer.
I think that's very...
So Joseph
that's a
coughed
good
and
story.
walked away. But in 1920, when he was in Morrisonville, there were at least three cures, call them miracles if you will, that occurred on that time.
Right.
How many books do you think have been written about Brother Andre?
Oh, hundreds and hundreds of books. There's
Isn't it
no doubt.
amazing?
It is.
I'm
The
sure
little
you've
man.
read almost all of them.
Oh, well, I've read as many as I can get my hands on.
There
yes.
is a wonderful book written by C. Bernard Ruffin, who's written a lot of books on the topics of religion of various kinds. And the book that I'm referring to is called The Life of Brother Andre, Miracle Worker of St. Joseph.
Right, right.
And it's so important for Donald Dashnaw to point out that on page 155, he talks about Brother Andre going to Morrisonville.
Isn't that beautiful?
But something else is important in Donald's life, and I mention this only because there are so many other stories that coincide exactly with this story I'm telling. Because Donald and Leona had a big family, as Kay and I did. And they had a little boy, Eddie, that was born in 1955 when he was 9 months old. There couldn't have been much more wrong with a little baby. He had tumors in his head, in his abdomen, in his stomach. He was paralyzed on one side. He couldn't eat. Doctors performed an emergency operation at Plattsburgh, and as much as told this family, they had about 4 other kids at the time, that they better enjoy this baby because they wouldn't have him very long. So where do you suppose they went with him?
To St. Joseph's Oratory. To pray.
And those were fervent prayers of the first order.
Oh, man.
And I should let you know that I saw Eddie a couple of months ago in South Carolina, and he weighs about 285 pounds, and he could probably tip this room
Wow.
over if he wanted to.
So he's still with us, huh?
So in 1965, a vice postulator came to Morrisonville, collected all the medical information about Eddie, just to add to the stacks and
sure.
stacks and stacks.
Of all those
So that's the
wonderful
Dajnow story to add to all the other stories. And
Oh.
anybody who goes on the internet to do research will
Right.
find dozens and dozens and dozens of similar stories.
It is so true. It is so true. And as I said, I learned so many beautiful stories as I came in contact with many of these pilgrims who traveled with us to Rome for the canonization. One of the women who was with us from Ticonderoga, she was, as a 9-month-old baby, her mother was told that she would be blind by the time she was 3. And her mother immediately jumped on a train with her and took her to Brother Andre in Montreal. And at the time, Brother Andre was still very much alive and well. And so this, as you can tell, this woman is a little up there in years. She was taken up there as a 9-month-old baby, and he prayed with her, and he told her, yes, she would be healed, and that her eyes were fine, and her eyes were fine from then on. And so he also asked her to bring back a gift of sorts, a linen cloth to use at the Church of St. Joseph, I would imagine. And as they were going to bring it back the next year, the Depression hit. And so it was a part of a real bad time that people couldn't travel. So they couldn't make it until this little girl was then 7 years old, and she went up with her mother to present this to Brother Andre. He was still alive. And she was with us on our pilgrimage. Can you imagine what that was like to have
Oh
a
my
woman?
goodness. Did you know that ahead of time?
Oh, yes. And wasn't it wonderful? Oh,
I would
yeah.
guess
I
you
heard
would know
all these
that.
wonderful stories ahead of time. We also had a gentleman who lives in Queensbury, whose father was an interpreter for Brother Andre. When he would travel south into the United States, he spoke English a little, but mostly French. So it was definitely that at times he could use an interpreter. So this man, Philip in Queensbury, his father was an interpreter. Then we had a Bassett family with us that were relatives of his, and they live up near Chateauguay. So we had them with us, and a couple other relatives, and wonderful stories.
If we had those 50-some people in this room,
Oh.
we'd never break for lunch
You
or
would
supper.
never break, because they had a lot to say, and I bring them with me in spirit now because what we shared in our time there at the canonization was a tremendous experience of God and of being in communion with the saints in heaven and just sensing our connections and our oneness and our support and help that we need to get through this. So
I think, since we know he's up there watching us, that he's probably tremendously embarrassed. And
Oh,
we'll
yes.
spend an hour and a half embarrassing him in every way we can.
yes, we will.
Because he was a humble guy in life, and I'm sure that humility followed him into his very high place in heaven.
I think so. As I was looking up front during the canonization, and his banner hung from St. Peter's Basilica in the back of where all this was taking place, I had a very strong sense that this man, this little humble man of God, who had never been to Rome,
Yeah, of course not.
was here at the highest pinnacle of our faith, being put up on St. Peter's Basilica. And as I sat with the Holy Father, the Holy Cross Father, who was with our group, and he explained to me the different things that were happening during the canonization, I realized that this was a moment that, this man's humility could still reach in and grab your heart. Because here he was, simple man of God, humble brother, no pomp and ceremony for him, but he was at the highest point because of his humility and his simplicity. And
Some people don't wear the vestments of fame very well. And he, as I said earlier in this program, he did not accept any personal credit for anything.
No.
I mean, he worked as a porter and a doorman and a barber and you name. He even tried to work in the factories in New England during
That's
the
right.
Civil War. And
that's right.
it was very difficult for him to do physical things.
Yes.
But he said when he got back to Canada after that experience in New England, nobody ever worked harder than I did.
He had to work twice as hard because of his infirmities, you know.
But he maintained that humility.
Yes.
And even there are some people in the hierarchy of the church in Montreal who weren't all necessarily happy about what was happening.
No.
Because this wasn't just a few friends and neighbors and fellow students up there in the school
Right.
who were coming to him and saying, "I've got a cough, what can you do?"
Right.
They were knocking the door down.
They were really causing sort of a ruckus, but it brought to attention the fact that, you know, this man of God was real and he was doing great things for the people of
So
Montreal.
I want to talk a little bit more about the trip.
Okay.
How did you first form this group again?
Well, as I was inspired to take along others in our North Country that have these connections, as we've talked about, with Brother Andre, Saint Brother Andre, I, was in touch and I advertised the fact that we would join our pilgrimage group from the North Country Pilgrims with the group going from St. Joseph's in Montreal. So it was a really beautiful connection that we were able to make. And then people called. We were only able to take a number of 51 because 51 was all that would fit on our bus with our Italian escort and our priest who went with us from Montreal, which we were very, very blessed to have with us. And so people called and, I sent them information, and the ones that were able to and could, came in and said, yes, I'm going. And so it was a wonderful thing. We all came together, and we had a previous meeting in Montreal to kind of, explain a little bit more information about what our pilgrimage would be like. And so many of us were able to go to St. Joseph's Oratory together and spend that early moment before we went to Rome. And it was about a month before we went to Rome. So then we all boarded planes and we got to Rome, and we had a beautiful experience of God there, more beautiful than ever. And if I could just show you.
I wish you would. Anything, I'll hold up
I
the
would
camera.
love to share this with you.
Oh, look at this.
This is the group
Let's
of
just-
my pilgrims.
Let's just hold this right up here so
There we
Calvin
go.
get a good picture of it.
And as you can see, we are there in the Piazza Navona, and the group shot was taken of us after we had just attended a Thanksgiving Mass at Santa Andrea della Valle, which is a beautiful cathedral in Rome, large enough to accommodate not only our group, but the extended group from Montreal. There were 900 total people from Montreal that traveled over alongside of us.
Yeah.
And so we were there together. We had the opportunity to do a vigil mass together with these people who had come especially because of Saint Brother Andre. And Holy Cross Fathers from all over the world.
Of course they would have to be.
They were all there. It was the first Canadian that was canonized, as well as the first Holy Cross Father. And I thought it was so, again, inspiring, of all of the wonderful, I'm sure, priests that have been Holy Cross Fathers, that it would be a brother who was first canonized.
Don't you love it?
I loved it.
I think there's a certain justice involved there.
I think that was wonderful.
People, once again, who may be watching this and not familiar with Holy Cross, I can't imagine that they wouldn't be, may think of Notre Dame off the bat, but Holy
Right.
Cross connected with so many other wonderful institutions, high schools,
Absolutely.
colleges,
Absolutely.
hospitals, you name it, across the country. So
Yes, yes. And all around the world, really.
I can't even fathom what the logistics must have been for you, and then when you get to Rome. For people who've never been to St. Peter's, They don't know how many people that square holds,
I
do
know. It's just, the numbers are like, massive, and it's like, it's a wonderful sense of who we are when we're there together, especially for something like a canonization. It's wonderful.
Well, let's talk about that day itself.
Okay, all righty.
From the very beginning.
From the beginning.
Butterflies.
Butterflies. Oh, it was one of those days. We were all so, we had built our whole pilgrimage around the fact that would be the central focus of what we were there about. And so that morning we got up very, very early because, of course, we wanted to get to the square very early so that we could be together and so that we could share this moment as a group. And so we stayed outside of Rome in a place called Rocca di Papa, which is a wonderful, beautiful place. It's called like the Beverly Hills of Rome because it's outside of Rome, and it's we were on one side of the lake, and on the other side of the lake is Castel Gandolfo, which is where the Holy Father spends his summers, at the summer retreat house he has there. So you can tell we were in a beautiful location. But it was a little outside of Rome, so we had to get up early and get on the bus and go down. And the one great thing about having time on the bus when we'd be in and out of Rome as we were traveling about there together was that we had Father Jamon with us, one of our Holy Cross fathers from Montreal, and he would help us by leading us in prayer, helping us to get in the spirit of what we are about to experience, because it's hard to put it in words, it's hard to put it in terms that are easily explained, but it was a phenomenal experience to be present for this canonization. It was like overwhelming for all of us. And so we get to the square of St. Peter's, and again, learning to be a pilgrim and not a tourist is sometimes difficult for some people because
I can understand that.
You have to be very patient with a lot of things that aren't easy, and pilgrimages shouldn't be easy or they wouldn't be pilgrimages. That's part of what the grace comes from, the little bit of a struggle it takes to get there and to be present and to do these things. So we were there together, and we were able to sit in a very good location where we had a great view of what was to take place. And luckily, again, as I said, I was sitting next to Father Jamon, who could also explain little by little as things were occurring what was happening. Our Holy Father, Benedict XVI, when he spoke about Brother Andre, he spoke about him in his humility, in his simplicity, but in his littleness, God became great. And he spoke about him, and we all just could so sense, the presence of Brother Andre in those moments. And it was wonderful to have him. And when they took up, especially the relics of the saints to be canonized, there was just a sense of how present we were to him, both there and both here, because we're so close to the place where he lived and walked and related to people here in the North Country. Spent much time also in Keysville, New York. A very close friend of his was a priest there, and just knowing that he had such closeness. And here we were in Rome for this man's really being raised to the highest honor a church can give someone.
He would have felt so out of place.
I know, wouldn't he?
If he were there,
Yes.
except in spirit.
In spirit, and we
Because
knew.
his bailiwick was in the little parishes around this, to meet with people in small groups, to talk
right.
personally to you,
That's right.
to exude that humility that we've talked about,
That's
and
right.
that, it every day of my life I have to remind myself to try to be humble.
Oh, we all
And
have
it's
that
not
cross.
always easy. As I was driving here today, I was listening to public radio, somebody talking about memoirs. And in the word memoir, of course, is the word me. And so there's a lot of ego in memoir. And I'm sure that Brother Andre would have had great difficulty writing a memoir in his lifetime.
Right, absolutely.
But he did talk a lot in his later years about things that he did. And it was always with great humility. He was, as you've mentioned 1,000 times, you call him a little man. He was little in stature. He was what we would call diminutive in size.
Right, but
And
great
never,
in spirit.
and yes, what he lacked in that robust physical and health issues, he had in that spirit.
So true.
So how did you not get lost in the shuffle? That's what I want to know.
Well, it was a big shuffle because besides the 900 plus pilgrims from Montreal, which we were a part of the larger group too, there were 7,000 that came from Australia, because Australia had a saint, their first canonized too.
Yeah.
So, and there were people there from Poland, because one of their saints, and there were people there from Spain, one of their saints. And so it was a very beautiful gathering of really the worldwide church. And you just sensed how, how much we are in communion with each other, even though we live so far apart. And so I didn't get lost in the shuffle. I did get robbed, but...
Oh, no,
yeah,
come on.
Yeah, I did.
Oh.
And that's a story in
That's
itself.
not supposed to happen.
Well, it was on our last day of being there as a group.
Dear goodness, come on.
It was, I should know better about Rome and the whole thing about being very extra careful because of some people who live their life by, doing these kind of things. But I was distracted because I was trying to organize and lead and make sure everyone was okay. And in that distraction, somebody actually took my passport and all my money. So
You didn't have your passport to come home?
Well, I was able to retrieve it, thanks be to God. But the greater part of the story is really that, all the money that I had on me was in this pouch with my passport, which I should know better than to carry. Luckily, I had a copy of it because we all were required to have copies of our passports with us in case this happened, because it often does in Rome. This was my seventh trip there.
Oh, so, it was? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
seven times.
Yeah, I'm a little...
What is there about 7 times?
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing. So, but as it was, I was to stay on another week after my pilgrims left, and all of the money that I had in order to be there for another week was now gone. And so when I had a realization that had happened, we had just gotten on a bus after we had been at the Holy Father's audience, which was a few days after the canonization. And all of a sudden I had this tremendous sense of poverty, maybe, but also, Brother Andre lived in trust of God, and he lived totally with nothing.
Amazing.
And I just had a real true sense that God would take care of me. I wasn't going to worry, like the birds of the air and the lilies of the field, that he was going to somehow work this out. And I also knew I still had to carry on as leading this group and helping them to, accomplish the rest of their pilgrimage. So I couldn't allow it to affect me. So after delivering them to the catacombs and going off to the police station to do a report, it all turned out that there was a little girl on our bus who, there were 2 young ladies that were with us, ages 9 and 11, that were such beautiful little young ladies that were such an inspiration to all of us and had really brought a lot of the spirit of youth to our group, and it was wonderful. One of these young ladies, after hearing about my loss, went about the bus with a little bag and took up a collection for me.
Isn't that beautiful?
And it was such a touching thing. Of course, I didn't know what was happening because I was still, kind of trying to keep my focus. And then that evening, when we were all together in the dining room with like 7 busloads of people, so that's 50 times 7 people, one of our pilgrims stood up to give a little witness about this young lady's special deed that she did for someone who had undergone such a trauma. And after sharing that, this little girl grabbed the bag and went around to all these pilgrims. Well, I want to tell you,
I love it.
The most humbling thing, first of all, I was very humbled by the fact that it even happened to me, because I was like, oh, how could this happen to me? But it did, and so we go on, and actually, to tell you the truth, that little child went around and took that collection, and I was able to recover all the money I needed for the next week. Is that not amazing? And so,
what did our Lord say about little children?
Little children,
Oh,
yeah, to be
here
like
we
little
go.
children. And she's a beautiful young lady. And so, also, then it was truly clear to me that, these people had come to the aid of myself, and I was overwhelmed by the generosity and the care and the love and the concern that they had for me. And I knew I had truly experienced the communion of saints here on earth, the ones that walked with me, the ones with just a small s in their saint name, but that someday, Brother Andre and all those other greater saints, we were all together in that place, and so it was beautiful.
So you never got your real passport back?
No, but I was able to go to the American Embassy and get a temporary passport, which was a whole nother challenge, but God was good. He helped me get that all together.
And you made some lasting friends, I think.
Oh, definitely. We are definitely bonded for life. And when you share this kind of experience in the Spirit, there's something that makes you more brothers and sisters than sometimes your own blood brothers and sisters, because you have a sense of who you are eternally, of who you want to be, of what you're living for. And so we really feel very strongly bonded, and I know we're going to keep in touch. We're going to have a reunion in Montreal.
Are you really?
Oh, yes.
I should have known. You probably won't even wait for a year, will you?
Well, no, heavens. we didn't even want to wait very long, but with the holidays, we figured we'd put it after the holidays. But Father Jamon, who lives there at the oratory, and said he would make sure that they have a pilgrim house up there, and we'd all be able to spend some time there together and share our memories and our photos and our all the things that God gave to us there again together.
So, many of the people who are watching this now have actually seen the canonization on television,
Oh,
one way or
yes.
the other,
Right,
because there were lots of people to record it, and lots of ways it was recorded for posterity.
That's right.
Have you been able to stand back and watch the actual event?
Actually, I've not had the opportunity
Well,
to.
come on!
I look forward to it, and I know that it is available and people can view it. There's other ways of online getting in touch with where they might be able to get a chance to do that. That was a wonderful thing, and I can't wait to have that opportunity
Do
myself.
you ever wake up in the morning and say, as I'm sure Brother Andre did, Saint Brother Andre did many times, but I'm just a speck. How do I fit into this whole thing? When you watch that on television, you're going to really get that
Feel
feeling.
that.
Saying, I can't even see a speck that could be me over there in the
I don't even
corner."
know where I could be there. Well, it's certainly true, but I also know how much of a child of God we all are if we allow ourselves to open ourselves to that realization, and how much greater can we be, even a speck of dust that we are all children of God. And like Brother Andre, we too are called to be saints. We're called to be holy, and as much of a challenge as that is, it's possible. And we have one more saint in heaven now who is very close to us that will help us get there, I believe.
Tell me why you went to Rome so many times.
Well, I guess for myself, it's truly it's the heart of my faith. Rome, for me as a Roman Catholic, is truly the place where the center of my spirit is, because of my beliefs and my strong values of my church. And so going to Rome the first time was a gift. It was given to me by someone who knew that I would love to be able to share that place. And I say it was a gift from God because it was my 50th birthday at the
Oh.
time. So I was really blessed to be able to go and to share Rome and to really get a sense. I'm also a secular Franciscan, a third order Franciscan.
Wonderful.
So I think as much as Rome is a part of my faith center, the place that's my center of spirituality is Assisi, which is just outside of Rome by about a little over an hour. So to be able to visit both places is always amazing for me.
So St. Francis is looking down on you too, right?
Yes. And another humble man of God who was never a priest, St. Francis of Assisi, there we go, who just remained that humble brother, truly just doing simple, good things daily, not anything extraordinary. And I think that's what's really important for us to have these saints to look to, because we can see how their lives didn't take on, a lot of grandiose and magnificence. It was in their humility and their simplicity that God's life was most brought apparent to people. And that's what he's calling us to.
What did Brother Andre say about small brush strokes?
It's with small brush strokes that God paints the greatest masterpieces.
Ta-da!
Right? I knew it was something like that, yes.
It fits the context
It does.
of what we've said all day.
And it's
here
true with our
today.
lives. We have to remember, speck as we are, that it's those small things together that really paint the picture of God for people in their lives and help us to reach heaven, which is why we're here.
A lot of things go through my mind when I hear the story, and I commend you for everything you've done. But there are lessons to be learned every time our eyes open up in the morning and even as we sleep and pray.
Absolutely.
And there is a lesson of humility here, but I think another lesson is, your thoughts matter,
Mm-hmm.
your prayers matter, your good thoughts matter. Try desperately to outweigh the bad thoughts with positive thoughts
Positive
about
things.
things.
That's right, because
About
we
how
can-
full that glass really is, because we live in. It's been said a lot of times through history, but these are tumultuous times.
They are. They're
And these
tough.
are desperate times for
Absolutely.
many. So it's time for other people to emulate you and what you've done.
Well,
And you have to have a great feeling of satisfaction having done this and having been right there.
it was a wonderful thing, and the greatest part about it is that I knew it was more than I could accomplish myself. It was truly something that I could only do with God's grace, and to be an instrument of that grace and just allow that to flow in a moment like this was tremendous. I mean, it's beyond being able to explain to anyone.
We're all instruments,
But
aren't we?
we are all truly instruments of His love and His grace and His presence, and we have to continue to be that for others. And I think that we can't do that of our own nature. We need His help, and we
yeah.
need the help of the
yeah.
prayers and the intercession of these saintly men and women who have gone before us, who walk beside us. We don't walk alone, and so that's really
I
important.
love it.
Yeah.
If I could sing, I'd sing that song. Hemingway said, "No man is an island, and no woman either."
Amen.
We've got a lot of things to talk about
Amen.
because we have a computer with pictures on it.
Oh, boy.
We're going to go to that in just a moment, okay, Ursula?
Wonderful, thank you. And here we
We're
have.
continuing with our interview with Ursula Akey on her pilgrimage to the Holy Land for the canonization of Saint Brother Andre.
To the church's holy land, which is Rome,
The
right?
Church's Holy Land in Rome, that is exactly right. For the canonization of Saint Brother Andre on October 17th. We're recording in early December, and now we're joining the technological age to see some of the fabulous pictures. And we're starting with this one. I wonder who that lady
I
is.
don't know. She looks familiar. But this is just a shot of me at the day of the canonization as we awaited the Holy Father and everyone to begin the process. We all got there very early to get in a position to be able to really get a sense of
Okay.
Move the mic so it's facing you guys.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So it truly was a wonderful spot. We were able to get right in front, not really up close and personal, but you didn't need to be. It almost was a greater experience to sense how many wonderful people from all over the world were there with us. And so this picture is taken, I tried to kind of give indication that we were here about those saints that are hanging from the front of St. Peter's Basilica. There were 6 of them, as we know, and Saint Brother Andre was one of them. And it was beautiful to see his photo hanging up there, just blowing in the wind, and just truly the Spirit was so present to all of us that day. It was wonderful.
Okay, next.
Okay, next. Okay. So we're going to go. This is just a little bit of a view where you can actually see that the banners are there to the right of the main middle door is where Brother Andre's banner was hanging. And the crowds were enormous. We filled St. Peter's Square. There wasn't a
It
square.
takes a lot of people to fill St. Peter's Square.
I think they estimated large numbers, like tens of thousands, and I can't remember. I heard it once when I was there, what they estimated the crowd was for this canonization, with people from, again, all over the world, with having different saints from different countries, each being raised to this level of sainthood in the Church's life. So it's beautiful. And as you can see in that picture also, the altar that sits down at the top of the stairs where the Holy Father actually presides. And to the right, there are all of the dignitaries that are present. And to the left, you see, to the left of the altar, you see sitting in their red and white, the cardinals that are there. And there were, of course, cardinals from all over. The cardinal from Canada was also there. And we had many of our priests locally there. There were 6 from our diocese, I believe.
kidding.
6. Yes,
Wow.
pretty sure. There were 6 of them. And it was wonderful. They weren't with our group, but we did get to see them while we were there at different times when we were gathered, especially in a place that was giving thanks for the canonization of Brother Andre. And also, at times when we were on tour, we sort of would kind of see each other at different places at the holy sites we visited. And it was wonderful to see them and to know we were all there together. Okay, so let's see, we will go next. I'm trying to think what's next here. Oh, just another picture. This happens to be...
That's a happy picture.
That's a happy picture. There were a lot of these happy moments of us all very much celebrating being there. On the left is my sister-in-law, Mary Ann Trombley, who teaches at Seton Catholic. She is the granddaughter of the man who I spoke about earlier who was healed.
Oh, yes.
Which is Fred Akey. And then my husband in the center, peeking out from under his hat. And he is the grandson of the man who was healed. And then on the right is my sister-in-law.
You have the first name. Here's the husband.
My husband's name is Jim Akey, yes. And we live in Osceola Forks. And then my sister-in-law on the right, she came from Florida with her mother, her aunt, and her niece. And she is married to my husband's brother. So she feels very, very akin and close to Brother Andre based on, her connection, like my connection with the family. So we had a wonderful, wonderful moment there together.
What's her name?
Her name is Angeli Akey.
Yeah.
She is an
Galvin
angel.
helps us when we leave out
Thank
things.
you. I'm sorry, that's great. Angeli Akey, and she lives in Gainesville, Florida. She's a physician there, and she's a wonderful lady of God.
Isn't it wonderful to have so many friends and
Oh,
family
it
together
is.
and to be part of this?
It was so...
It's hard to get a bird's eye view of the enormity
I know.
of St. Peter's Square
It's so
in the
true.
pictures, and photographs never tell the whole
They never
story.
tell the justice of it all.
But
No,
they do
it's-
capture a moment.
They
and that
do.
looked like a very happy moment.
That was a very happy moment of many, one of many that we shared together there, yes.
Okay.
And we will treasure, so, yes. And so, I think that we've all been definitely affected by having experienced what we've experienced there. We truly know a real special kind of empowerment from having been present at this moment, and know that we also are charged with marching orders to do the same and to keep going with our job here. But we have much to be thankful for. to
Yeah,
have
more
been there.
pictures?
Oh, do we
I
ever?
want to see some
Oh,
more.
my goodness. Okay, give me a minute. I'll pull some up. Are we
All right.
ready? I got it. Yes, and I'd just like to share this photo, which was taken on our last evening together. It was taken in the dining room of the beautiful Mondo Miori, where we stayed during our time. And this is that sweet, precious little girl. Her name is Kathleen O'Neill from Ticonderoga, who basically was the one that took that wonderful collection up after I had lost all of my funds for my upcoming week in Rome. And she was just a sweetheart the whole trip, but she certainly came across as a little saint when she did what she did
How
for
did she
me.
happen to be there? With her parents? or with
Her father, Ron O'Neill from Ticonderoga,
Oh, sure.
took her, and it was a great joy to have her along. The other woman in this picture, her name is Daniela, and she was our Italian escort, and she really made our trip very special. She really sensed in our group kind of something she had never sensed before with any group, and we made it very clear to her what our objective was of being pilgrims and not tourists, and we wanted her to know that we were all about the spirituality of the moment. We were all about really sharing in, the spirit and the sacredness of being in Rome. And she was a very wonderful girl who appreciated that, and at the end of our pilgrimage really knew that she also had experienced it because she was with us. And so she said there was no more special group than our group. We were very
Don't you
special.
love it? And she's never said that before, right?
Well, maybe not. But she
I love
also
it.
said I was the best tour leader she ever
Oh,
had.
my goodness, how could you wear your hat?
It was very hard. And then I was trying to be more humble again, like Brother Andre. But
Sometimes
no,
it's hard to be humble.
It is. Well,
That's
not
great.
not everyone had the same experience on this pilgrimage. I think there were some people who tended towards being more on the pilgrimage side of what they were about, and then there were some who were there along for being like the tourist, being on vacation, and you could sense the difference in the people. And let me tell you, it was quite a challenge to be taking care of 50 people with 50 different impressions about what they were about. But it was a great grace, and I do thank God for this opportunity that He actually led me to do. And I hope to be able to do it again. I also told Spirit Tours in Montreal if they wanted to open an office here in New York, I'd be glad to open an
Oh,
office.
sure you would. Isn't that amazing?
It'd be
Taking
wonderful.
advantage of every opportunity.
Well, because I feel, to me, a great part of sharing our life of God in the church is being able to take people to sacred, holy places and share that moment with them, and truly bring them into a sense of who we are and what we're about and what our mission is in life, and then bringing them back and sending them forth to do that good thing.
This is a slightly different pilgrimage than others we've seen,
Yes,
because some pilgrimages involve sacrifice.
right.
And how many times have we seen the faithful crawling on their hands and knees, and other faiths rolling over and over and over and traveling miles, and crawling up hundreds and hundreds of steps.
It's true.
There was a lot of sacrifice in the life of Brother
Andre.
Andre,
Yeah.
Andre, and he had the spirituality was built into that little baby. And it was obvious throughout his entire life, and everybody who's written one word about him talks about that spirituality.
It's true.
People watched him pray. As I said before, they would be with him in a room. Students would say that they'd try to go to sleep and wake up, and Brother Andre would still be there praying.
All he could do was pray, is what the
that's
quote
right.
was.
And they'd
All
wake
he
up in
could
the
do
morning
was
and his
pray.
bed was unused.
Yes.
And yet somehow he was sustained by something other than sleep and food.
Oh, absolutely. He was a man of the Spirit. There is no doubt about it.
So you paid your sacrifice when you lost your passport and your money. But you got it
That
back,
was-
so you learned
yes.
a lesson from the
I
little
learned
girl.
a lesson, and I experienced a whole nother level of spirituality by the people that I was with, truly being who they were called to be, and helping when there was a need. And it was overwhelming to be, the recipient of that. That was a very humbling experience. But I was thankful to God that it happened.
There are a lot of very holy places on the face of this earth. Have you made other pilgrimages?
I actually have not, and I know that someday I would like to experience other places, and I've just recently talked to someone about possibly doing a pilgrimage to Lourdes and those shrines, because they're very beautiful, and also talked to someone else about going to Poland and the shrines in Poland, because they're also very special. But Rome is a place that you could spend 6 months there and never see it all. There's 399 Catholic churches that are historical churches, but there's 597 that are total, Catholic churches. So it's just a place that you could never see enough, and you could never be there enough.
Not to mention the rest of the country.
Oh yeah, well, Italy is gorgeous, and I love it.
My. Do you have another picture set yet?
Oh no, but
Okay,
I
let's
can get
stop.
one.
Let's stop for a minute,
Let's
and then
get
we'll
one.
find one.
Okay. So another one of our beautiful stories that came out of our pilgrimage began with a tragic happening that happened in the Toronto airport as we were between planes. We were flying from Montreal to Toronto, and then in Toronto we caught a plane directly to Rome. So while we were in the midst of changing planes in Toronto, our whole group together were kind of moving together through the airport, and as we were going up an escalator, one of our pilgrims had a terrible fall. She went up and over on her head and rolled down the escalator.
Oh my goodness.
To the point that I, as a nurse, and her best friend, who was with us as a nurse, came running to her side and thought she must have broken her neck. It was the most ugly sight I've ever seen. She literally rolled, and the escalator kept bumping
Of course,
as
of
she
course,
was
of
going.
course.
And so they shut the escalator off, and we initially thought she was unconscious, because she was still and she wasn't moving, and we thought for sure maybe we'd even lost her. So we immediately began praying, and of course as a nurse, we start to do those nursing things. We shake her, Maddie, are you okay? And as it turns out, she started to come to. She was covered in blood, and she was lacerated quite severely around her eyes, and her eyes were swollen. And of course, we all ran to her aid, but there was so little we could do. We got her to a point where we called security, and security came, and they were able to bring in the rescue squad. And during these moments, we were all in a state of shock that this had happened. And as tour leader, I, of course, felt very responsible, about what I should be doing. And so when it came time, she was insisting, she was able to talk, that she was going on this plane. She didn't want to not go. But we all know that there could have been more severe injuries than we saw, and that she needed to be taken and checked. So they whisked her away with the ambulance to the Toronto hospital, and her husband beside her. So this is Ty and Maddie Rabidou from our North Country, Deacon Ty Rabidou. And, the whole way as she was leaving, she was just like, I can't miss Rome. I can't miss this pilgrimage. I can't miss the canonization of Brother Andre. And we all prayed. We prayed with her before she left. We prayed the intercession of Saint Brother Andre and Saint Joseph and all the holy angels and saints of God to be with her and to help her so that she could be able to join us. So she was in the hospital. We flew away to Rome, and we were so heavy-hearted the whole way to Rome about her not being with us and her accident and what had happened. And we were all so concerned about her. And then we got word the next morning that at the hospital, she had been checked over, she had been sutured up, and there were no severe injuries, and they were flying her out that day. So, praise God.
Isn't that amazing?
Isn't that wonderful? So they flew
What a
her out.
story.
It was a wonderful story.
Oh my goodness, did
And
she have a
she-
couple of black eyes
Oh
for the trip?
boy, did she ever. As you can see in this photo.
It's not funny a bit.
No,
wow.
but I'll tell you, what a trooper. She was there the next day. She joined us at the vigil mass that we had the night before the canonization. And she was just so happy to be with us, and we all were like...
No concussion or
No.
anything?
It was a miracle.
I cannot believe it.
Well, we really attribute that
I
to...
was having 7 heart attacks as you were describing that. Things can happen in escalators. People
Oh,
don't realize
they don't.
that. Little
And
kids get things caught. and-
It's very
oh
scary.
My goodness.
And to see her tumble down right in front
Oh,
of
yeah,
me
just
and not be
scary.
able to actually grab her and help her was a very out of control. So, but our prayers, and I'm sure Brother Andre's presence and St. Joseph were definitely a part of this healing. And so she made it through the rest of that pilgrimage. She actually stayed the extra week with me. And,
Who needs any more stories after that one? That's the best ones of all. Let's find another
so,
picture, okay?
Let's
stop
find
a minute.
another one.
This is a special moment for you.
Oh, absolutely.
about it.
Very, very special. Well, you know, when you're in Rome, the most wonderful thing about being there for us as Roman Catholics is that the Holy Father resides there and is at these great gatherings of the canonization and the audiences. And so it's always wonderful when you can get up to a point that you can feel his presence in a close way. And so our pilgrimage, our group, did just that. We made sure that we all were at a point that we would at least be close to him as he drove by. And so it's like a moment of anticipation that can't be explained, to know that you're going to have that time. And it's a great, it's just a great feeling, and it's like it fills your whole system with just spiritual excitement that you're going to be close to that person who you know is Papa. Papa is going to be right there with you, real close and personal. And so as he's coming down and we know he's going to be going by us, everyone's like in this state of like truly just waiting for him to be close, and then he gets close to you. And at that moment, I personally couldn't possibly put a camera in front of my face and take a picture, because I had to
I
have
would
that
have been
moment.
shaking probably.
And as he goes by, and he's giving us all his blessing as he goes by, I was able to, once he had gone through the process of blessing us, he turned to the other side to give his blessing to others. And as he did so, I was able to capture this picture that you will be able to see. And you can see how very close we were to him. And then it's like a moment of just turning to those who were near you when this happened, and everyone's just filled with tears and just very much filled with grace and blessing.
Radiant smiles.
Yeah, just truly knowing that you've had that moment, and it's a true connection with that person that we so look up to and so trust to lead us in
There are a lot of golden moments over there,
Oh,
didn't
yes.
you? Huh?
I could probably write a book.
And maybe
But,
you should.
yes, well, I've given it some thought and been encouraged to.
You know, a
but-
lot of people have written articles about this.
Mm-hmm.
You've been interviewed at least 50,000 times. What? Now, you've been in North Country Catholic.
Right. hmm
Where else?
Oh, the Press Republican is in the process of doing an article about our being there at the canonization. Susan Moore is putting together something for that. And, again, it's one of those things that when people ask you about it, it's hard to put into words. It's very difficult to explain what it was truly like in any way that can be expressed vocally. It's a matter of the spirit, and it's just great to have experienced that and to bring it back and share it with all of you, because I know that you too will be blessed by the fact that now we have this wonderful, humble Saint Brother Andre, who is one of us, one of our local people who has been brought to this level and can be with us and help us on our journey.
You know, we just mentioned a few moments ago off camera our wonderful, still new bishop,
Yes.
Terry LaValle, and how he would love to have gone on that
Yes.
pilgrimage with you. But I think it's important to mention here, as we've mentioned several times when we interviewed him and so on, how blessed we are to have
We
him
are.
as our bishop.
Again, another one of us as our leader and our shepherd here in our diocese. We are truly blessed, and I'm so thrilled that we have him taking us onward here in the Diocese of Ogdensburg, and we have great things to be said. I think it's nice what I read in what he said about his favorite saint when asked not long ago about who his favorite saint was. And of course, as bishop and as priest, he would tell you about those people who he felt connected with, St. John Bosco and a few others. But he said, now that St. Brother Andre is a saint, I have to say, he's my favorite saint. So, so I think it's a wonderful thing that he included the fact that now, you know, this man who is so much a part of our locality is now somebody very close to us in heaven, praying for us and helping us and helping Bishop Terry LaValle also. I know he'll be with him, as all of our prayers and thoughts are too.
All right, let's pause again. Now we're going to do a little table talk.
A little table talk, yes.
All right, what do we got here?
Okay, well, I wanted to share with you some very, very casual pictures of our pilgrims as we dined together every night at Mondo Miori, our beautiful residence that we stayed in while we were in Rome. And I want to take you through, there's 4 different slides here of our tables that we had a wonderful time sharing every day when we'd get back. We had so much to talk about and so many things to share. And here in this picture, I just wanted to point out to you here on the left, Simone Marcotte, who is from Plattsburgh. She is one of the sacristans at St. Peter's Church in Plattsburgh. And she was one of our pilgrims who brought much very spiritual blessing to us as she shared stories of Brother Andre, feeling very personally connected as a French Canadian herself, and who has a great devotion to Brother Andre. And it was wonderful because she shared many stories in history of people that she knew that were also touched by his life and healed by him, and of her life and how he and his spirituality have affected her. And so it was very inspiring to us. And she's not very, young and spry, but boy, I'll tell you, she kept up with us all. She was quite the trooper. So this is Simone on the left in the front on this table, and others. And we're going to move on now to our next slide, which is another table. Many people here from the North Country, people from Champlain, and people from the western part of our diocese here. We also have a couple people from Pennsylvania who joined us, and a woman from Vermont who went with her mother. And so it was a wonderful, wonderful gathering. We definitely bonded together. Another group picture, and another table of wonderful pilgrims who were enjoying their Italian dishes. Very simple, I might admit. We ate like pilgrims, but we were nourished and we had enough to go on. And of course, the wine is always wonderful in Italy.
Oh, yes.
Nothing like the wine in Italy. And our next picture. And here I got to sneak in this one after taking the others. My husband and I sitting there on the right. A young couple next to us from New Jersey. He is a relative of Brother Bassett, Brother Andre Bassett, Saint Brother Andre. And so the young man whose head is above mine is a relative of Brother's. And his wife, he is in the Air Force. And they came all the way, they actually flew out of Boston instead of Canada to join us in Italy for our pilgrimage. So that was beautiful. And so that is the end of our time, and it probably was one of those times of being the end of our time together, like our Last Supper, and it was one that will continue to be celebrated as our Last Supper is always celebrated, because we really truly will always feel united because of our experience that we've shared in Rome and Assisi, and always be in touch with each other in spirit, if not in body. We will get together. So
Well, we're going to pause for a moment and we'll wrap up this wonderful conversation.
Awesome, thanks. And so, go ahead.
There, okay. That picture that there are people are looking at now is very special.
Oh, it is special, because as we had just witnessed the canonization of Brother Andre, Saint Brother Andre now, we realized, in this picture that was part of what we were able to receive once this canonization process was done, was this beautiful picture of Brother Andre behind St. Peter's with our Holy Father's hand raised in blessing, but that we can tell that Saint Brother Andre is now a saint because he has a halo, which is descriptive in our church's life of the fact that he has been canonized and made official as one of our older brothers and sisters in heaven that we can look up to and count on to be there with us and helping us as we journey through this life here.
Ursula, you brought this entire event to life for us. Those of us who would love to have made that pilgrimage with you. I would never discourage anyone from a pilgrimage because it does have special meaning. Different places for different people. This had to be the epitome for you.
It was definitely the high point, no doubt, because of not only the place we were pilgrims in, which is a pilgrimage place that everyone wants to go to. Rome is such a center, but also because of the event that we experienced in the canonization. You're so right.
You know, I bet some people watching this who may not even be from northern New York or Canada or Vermont a little left out because they don't have a saint from their neighborhood, so to speak. But we're blessed in that respect.
Yes, we are.
That his life had such an impact on so many people. I think we've proven that here today with some of our personal stories,
right,
and with many others. And I know you said you heard story after story after story, and the fact that this wonderful man died within my lifetime.
Oh my goodness!
Almost, because it was just 6 months before I was born in 1937.
Absolutely, that's so wonderful, isn't it?
And to know about him, just to know about him, is an enriching experience.
It is.
To study him, as you have, to become intimately involved with what the man did and what the saint is still doing for us now.
Absolutely.
From his elevated spot in heaven is kind of neat. And I'm sure some of the people who started watching this program 90 minutes ago had no idea where it was going to lead, and they might have said, oh, another one of those shows. And I hope that we've inspired them.
Exactly.
If not to go to Rome, at least to go to the oratory on Mount Royal in Montreal, which is just a short distance away from Plattsburgh, where we are.
Yes.
I want to thank Jim Murray and Terry Miron for allowing us to come into their wonderful new rebuilt facility
Very
here,
nice.
the Comfort Inn, to do this. They've been kind to us before the fire and now after the fire.
Oh.
And so it's nice to have a nice quiet room. I want to offer to you my personal thanks for this, for your long dedication to the church and what it stands for. And who knows what the future might bring. What do you have any giant plans that you can reveal to us as we're doing this just before Christmas 2010?
I think that the biggest plan is just to continue to follow the Spirit as it leads and to truly bring the spirit of, of Brother Andre to others and to live it out fully. And then to see where that goes. I mean, there may be other pilgrimages. I've truly made a big pilgrimage of heart, though, with this one, and been able to share it with many of my brothers and sisters. And so that's
Some
been a
of
joy.
us don't open our hearts and souls to follow the Spirit where it leads, and we kind of block off the path.
Wow.
But maybe this will inspire us to all open our hearts.
And no better time than this wonderful time before Christmas to prepare ourselves and our hearts to be the place where Christ can come in and dwell back in the day 2,000 years ago, but today as well. Absolutely.
I love it. This has been so much fun.
It's been
Ursula
great.
Akey,
Thank you
so much.
Oh, it's been wonderful. Thank you.
And who knows where we're going to be next time for
Amen.
our little corner.
Amen.